Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called How America's Farms Became Inferior to Europe's. I know there's probably a lot of, debate whether or not I think probably just produce as in fruits and vegetables in general are better in Europe or in the United States. I think probably most people in the United States will tell you it's in Europe. I think that's where the real good produce is. But yeah, I'm guessing that has something to do with how, farming practices and stuff. I don't know, this looks very interesting, so let's check it out and comment, like, and subscribe.
Check this out. This is Almeria, Spain, and it's completely white. You can see thousands of these huge rectangular rooftops. What are these, and what's underneath them? I went to Spain to find out. And what I found was a sea of plastic. 150 square miles of it, to be exact. And underneath all of this is something you wouldn't expect.
Gardens, tens of thousands of them. All of these structures are actually greenhouses. This region is roughly half the size of New York City, but it supplies nearly 50% of all of Europe's vegetables.
Oh, wow.
That is an insane amount of veggies for such a tiny place.
This kind of farming looks super different from what I'm used to seeing back home.
Yeah.
Trust me, I'm from Nebraska. I know farms.
But these massive US mega farms aren't growing rows and rows of fruits and vegetables. They're typically not even growing plants meant for human consumption.
What on earth?
In 2023, the entire United States grew about 1 billion pounds of bell peppers.
That's
a decent,
crazy.
Respectable amount. But here, just in Almeria, they grew 1.5 billion pounds of bell peppers.
How is that even possible? If this tiny area is so crucial to Europe's livelihood, it got me wondering, why isn't America's system more like this?
Yeah.
Why are we getting so massively outgrown by a tiny plastic-covered desert in this little corner of Spain? Could it change? And for our own food security, should it change? So I did what we always do here on Business Explains the World. Flew to the source to see it for myself, talk to the people who actually make it happen, and find some answers.
And after all that, one thing became clear. America's farms should look a lot more like this.
If it works for them, yeah, sure. I think also Spain is pretty, our agriculture is pretty big there, so I get it.
I think I'm the last person on this train.
Well, I overshot my train ride by a stop, so now I have to take an Uber.
Well, it happens.
So here we are. It's like hard to even film because the sun is just radiating off the plastics. Half of Europe's vegetables come from this area I'm looking at right now. I feel like
crazy.
Simba and Mufasa looking down. You know what you want after 30 hours of travel is a vegetable.
Sure.
Today we're at one of the tens of thousands of family-owned farms here in Almeria.
This is a third-generation greenhouse. It was from my grandparents. So agriculture, let's say, is running through my veins, in my blood,
Does this go all the way down there?
Can that actually be inherited? Probably not, right? Green thumbs? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is a boatload of peppers. Standing here, it's hard to believe that this region used to be one of the most barren places on the continent. Almeria is part of the only true desert in Europe. Its big, dry, rugged landscapes were the settings for some of our early spaghetti westerns and big blockbusters.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's so cool.
Not what you'd think of as an agricultural mecca. And for a long time, it wasn't.
Fair.
It used to be one of the poorest provinces in Spain, since the arid, windy climate and poor soil made the area basically unfarmable. But that all changed starting in the 1950s, when farmers around here got clever. They started by adding layers of sand and mulch to the soil to give it life, and then added layers of plastic to protect the plants from the harsh conditions.
It's crazy that I haven't thought of that
Plastic,
before.
for us, is like a shield.
They found that crops grown underneath this plastic grew far better and were generally safer than crops grown outside of it. Sprinkle in some watering tech advancements, add in some greenhouse engineering techniques, and top it off with joining the European Union so that they can sell produce tariff-free, and you've got this massive greenhouse powerhouse you see here. Now, there's a lot more to the story of how this place came to be. Decades of transformation at the behest of a dictator, just as a teaser. But we'll put a pin in that for later.
Well, yes.
For now, I can see why they call this place El Milagro de Almeria, the miracle of Almeria. Today, this tiny area grows between 2.5 and 3.5 million tons of fruits and vegetables every year.
That's an
There are
insane
other
amount.
places on the European continent that can grow in greenhouses at scale, like in the Netherlands, for example, but no one can really compete with Almeria's 300 plus days of sunlight every year.
That's crazy.
These greenhouses don't have to burn through heat and energy in the winters like a lot of others do. I mean, it's February right now and it's it's hot.
Yeah, sure.
And if
so
you're
that's
thinking, but what about summer? Doesn't it get too hot? Don't worry, they figured that out too. When the temperature outside starts climbing into the 90s, farmers paint the outside with white chalk to reflect the sun back out. And scientists have actually found that this has had a cooling effect on the entire region. But
Wow,
to my
really?
American eyes, perhaps one of the most interesting things about Almeria is just how many people work here. There are
lot.
tens of thousands of individual family farms, including Hermans.
Family
It takes a
teamwork,
village.
no?
Over the past few decades, farmers around here have shifted away from using pesticides to
What is
doing
that?
something called integrated pest management.
We don't use harmful chemicals. We use good insects that eat the bad ones. This kind of envelope.
That's full of good bugs?
Yes, they came out and then they start living in the plants.
Oh, bug.
This is the queen spontaneous bug, which eats
What? Oh my
Everything.
god.
Spontaneous bugs, so you don't have to
Yeah.
like import those ones. They just show up.
It's a good signal to have this kind of mites in your greenhouse.
Okay.
That means that your crop is healthy.
Sure, that's why they want to
So
eat
that's the
it.
secret sauce for farmers here in Almeria. They sort of combine this like low-tech usage of things like just bugs, preserve your water, cover it with plastic.
There's a lot
this
of
means
bugs.
that growing conditions inside here tend to be a lot more consistent and less risky than if the plants were just outside. And
look at the
all these
bugs.
farmers aren't competing directly with each other. Instead, they pool their crops and their power into cooperatives. This way they have more bargaining power collectively and they're able to keep supplies consistent and
It's
incomes
better.
pretty high throughout the year.
Correct.
When I say gas station food, the American audience is not thinking fresh fruits and vegetables from like 50 feet away. So I'm really curious to go see what we can see. Yeah.
Oh,
see?
please.
Almeria.
Pueblo de Picar, Almería, España.
Everything's locally
Little
produced.
Spanish class for a little road
love
trip
that.
snack.
You have a ham. Cured ham, of
So this
course.
greenhouse system really seems to be working out for Europe. The US, on the other hand, does things a little differently. This is a map of all the farmland in the US. Over here and over here is where we grow our fruits and vegetables. We grow a lot of it, just
Yeah.
not enough to feed ourselves.
That's crazy.
And not because we can't, we just don't.
Yeah,
The
why?
US is the world's largest importer of fresh fruits and vegetables, a phenomenon that's been on the rise for decades. These days, on average, more than 1/3 of the vegetables consumed in the United States every year are imported.
Wow.
Some crops, like cucumbers, are almost entirely imported. Our most fertile soil is here, and I grew up here, so I know what I'm talking about. But instead of diversified rows of fruits and vegetables like these, our farmland is dedicated to huge monoculture crops. These are crops like
It's
corn, wheat, and
and corn.
soybeans. They're called commodity crops because they're not really meant for human consumption. Instead, they're processed into animal feed and biofuels and things like that. And while massive farms
That's insane to me because I swear I thought, that you're supposed to eat all the corn and all the wheat that's been produced in the United States. It's, they produce that. Well, you grow that in order for humans to actually eat. That's crazy.
for miles might sound great for that specific purpose, they have some serious downsides. Monocultures strip soil of its nutrients, rely heavily on chemical pesticides, and
right.
generally leave the plants more exposed to climate shocks and disease. But there's a reason our biggest farms look like that, and Almeria's look like this. It all goes back to how each country responded to a crisis. In 1933, FDR passed the Agricultural Adjustment Act, which later evolved into the Farm Bill.
Things on the farm are not as good as they should be, as good as they ought to be, or as good as they will be.
In short, the government gave farmers loans if they grew less crops. Then they bought up the excess and stored it until prices recovered. But only for the big commodity crops we've talked about before. Things like corn, wheat, and also cotton, hogs, and dairy.
Yeah,
and
but I get it.
It worked. Prices
Yeah.
stabilized and farms stayed in business,
was
especially
needed.
the biggest ones. They were the ones already growing those commodity crops, so they benefited disproportionately from
Yeah,
the
of
government's
course.
loans. Smaller farmers and sharecroppers got next to nothing. Okay, remember all that. Now, back over to Spain.
Okay.
Spain was reeling in its own way. Post-World War I overproduction, economic depressions, and a violent civil war that led to the establishment of the Franco dictatorship.
el trabajo, estimado como el más ineludible de los deberes, será el único exponente de la voluntad popular.
At this time, Spain's economy relied heavily on agriculture, but not here in Almería, not yet. For years, there had been ongoing efforts to irrigate this land with water from elsewhere, but most of them failed. And if they didn't fail, they were prohibitively expensive. There was a lot going on here, but basically the Franco regime established something called the National Institute for Colonization to help sort of revitalize and grow the agricultural sector. But their goals for Almería basically boiled down to two things. One, bring in more people to farm the land, and two, make that first one actually possible by developing new farming and irrigation techniques. While the INC fell far short of its stated goals, this area was nonetheless transformed, with thousands of hectares of new farmable land across about 130 new villages. In 1963, inspired by similar work in the Canary Islands, two INC scientists supercharged progress by wrapping a plot of land in plastic. The idea took off, and so did the productivity and profitability for the area's many, many small farmers. And all these small farmers banded together so that they could sort of stand up against the government. And that was a big contrast to what was happening in the United States. From the 1930s onward, the farm bills just kept propping up these larger farms that were growing commodity crops. As smaller farmers had to give up, the bigger farms got bigger, gained political lobbying power, and expanded their already massive commodity empires with the invention of new synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. So while farmers unified in Almería, they were fighting each other in the US. Jump to the 1970s, and the US government pivoted towards a free market approach aimed at just making food as cheap as possible for the consumer. What this meant for farmers is that Old MacDonald used to have a farm with chickens and cows and vegetables and oats, to Old MacDonald only grows soybeans or wheat or corn. Pick your monoculture. And with all of that storable product, we started exporting. By 1975, the US accounted for 50% of the world's grain exports. So all of that backstory is why Almería blossomed into this, and the United States blossomed into that. And the Farm Bill today still very much drives what the US prioritizes in its food system. The law still favors these big commodity crops like soybeans and wheat, while smaller vegetable and fruit farmers are sort of left on their own to navigate price dips. For example, in 2024, more than $3 billion in subsidies went to corn. Not even corn that people eat. So basically, we import what we want to eat and we export what we don't. Now, there is substantial fruit and vegetable farming in the US, but there are also real issues plaguing our farms, like growing water scarcity and land loss. So when you look at a place like Almería, which is so small but maximizes the use of its water and its land to produce all of this, it makes you wonder, shouldn't we, the United States, be able to do the same thing? The answer is kind of.
Oh no, why?
We do have greenhouses, some of which are very large and successful. But ultimately, our system can't really compete with greenhouses in places like the Netherlands, Canada, and Spain.
But why?
And that's because of money, labor, and centralization. Put simply, in the US, it will always be cheaper just to import from our neighbors. There is no competing with that. If we can expand greenhouses, well, so can Canada and Mexico, and they're going to do it in a cheaper way. Add to that the issue of labor, which has always been complicated in the US and is especially so now. The hard work of agriculture is mostly done by migrants, but our visa system is super complicated and pretty controversial. And finally, centralization. Greenhouse hubs in the Netherlands, Canada, and here are all built as these very centralized hubs where you have everything you need within a very
They also have like solar panels at the same time. Our airports and solar panels.
short distance. The product, education, research, workers, distributors, they're all right here.
Imagine if you're a supplier and you go to a place and all the greenhouses are there, how much easier that makes your job to sell to many customers. And now you're going to set up an office in that area. So sort of it's a chicken and the egg situation.
The US has a lot of catching up to do. And doing that with our entrenched system and our powerful farm lobby will be tricky.
The loudest person with the most money in America gets the change to happen. And that's not the same in other countries.
When talking about change, it might be helpful to look back at a place like the Netherlands and ask, how did they get this system in the first place? It's simply because in World War II, they starved. During the winter of 1944, a Nazi blockade cut off food, triggering a famine that killed 20,000 people and pushed millions more towards the brink of starvation. After that, the Netherlands vowed that nothing like that could ever happen again.
That's awful.
So securing their own food supply became a national priority. We see this kind of adaptation throughout history following food shortages. Even in the US,
There were victory gardens meant to boost our domestic food supply during and after the world wars. Urban farming spread across Cuba after a seed blockade left the country stranded. And as recently as COVID, tourism towns in Thailand that lost their income transformed empty plots into community gardens to help feed their neighbors.
We as humans create the most innovation when we face the most extreme and dire circumstances.
And here in Almeria, all of
the
this came about from trying to transform an inhospitable desert during desperate times. There is no perfect farming solution. This model has its own issues, many of which echo problems we have in the US. But we have to figure it out, because there is another existential threat looming. According to the United Nations, by 2050, farmers across the globe need to produce 70% more food than they are right now to feed the population.
That's scary.
Add to that, scientists also predict by that time, a lot of our topsoil will be so degraded that it will be basically useless. We have to take steps towards more controlled environment farming practices. We literally don't have a choice. The next farm bill is expected to pass this year, and it will dictate the food, farming, and conservation practices that the government prioritizes for the next 5 years. Right now, many of the already limited programs for indoor agriculture and greenhouses have been stalled by the Trump administration. Farming policy is often born out of crises. A nation that can't feed itself will die, so it must adapt. Do we just have to wait for another tragedy to strike the United States for us to change how we do things? I, for one, don't want to do that. So if farming policy is responsible for where we are today, maybe farming policy is the only way out.
Well, this ended up on a very scary note. It was a very interesting, obviously all the video and everything that they spoke about, all the farming and stuff. It was very interesting. However, I think that ending was just, oh my God, what a bummer. Speaking about scary nightmare situations, I think, and I know it's important because I think the average person is not really aware of those kind of things, but obviously you should, because you're gonna presumably, probably, chances are you're going to be living on this planet for the foreseeable future. So of course these kind of things affect you, and it's crazy because it says, I think it was 20 by 2050, which it sounds like a lot, right? It's that's so far away. But I think, yeah, I mean, it sounds far away, but usually for these kind of things, it's not really that much. I think time goes by so incredibly fast. Even you can tell, as in your own life and your human life. I think you just go around and you blink and it's been 10 years. Which, okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's usually how it goes. And I think when it comes to greater scale and greater projects such as this literally happens, and then again you blink and oh my, it's already 2050. So we're already there and we don't have a plan in place. That's quite scary to me. I don't know. I know the projections were obviously population is going to keep growing. Although I find that quite interesting, just as an outside, because you're constantly hearing. I think the birth rate has been declining it's in the case of all of Europe. So if they're declining, how is the world's population going to be bigger, by 2050? It's got to be, well, probably because other countries are not having that problem, and also because I believe that's something really important. People these days just live longer, and life expectancy, as technology, it's a little bit better, and as people, technology advances, medicine advances, and your quality of life just improves, and people, because of course, now people live longer these days, and that's going to keep, that number is going to keep going up. Humans living up to 100 is probably going to be normal and not an outlier, probably in the next 60, 80 years. So it's kind of a scary concept. It's just too many humans living on this planet. And of course it gets to the point of you start thinking very in apocalyptic, I think, terms, right? The water, all our resources, as in the whole planet Earth, all the resources are scarce. We haven't actually, it's not magic. I can't just... it's not a 3D printer, hopefully, maybe sometimes, at some point in the future, someone will create this. I think that would be great. Create a 3D printer that can just print, I don't know, tomatoes and food. Obviously not food as it's gonna give you meatballs. No. But I think it can grow, it can grow tomatoes, it can grow eggplants, it can grow zucchinis, whatever. That would be great. I think that would sounds like magic to me, but maybe all technology I think probably sounds like magic until someone, makes a leap in discovery and says, no, I think maybe we could do this. Obviously, again, that sounds like cloning a little bit. I think we technically already clone seeds and stuff. But I don't know. That's beyond my realm of understanding. I'm just putting it out there. I think that would be a great solution. Probably some scientists are already on it. But I'm it gets me worried. Again, those kind of videos are very interesting in how farms work and how other countries do agriculture and how it works and stuff. However, it ends up on a really sour and scary note. Because, again, it's 5 years, right? It's, she mentioned, it's going to be, they're going to pass a bill and it's going to be in the next 5 years. This is going to dictate the policies are going to be followed. And you say, well, 5 years, that's, again, it's really a lot for your life. But, because, again, you're living it. So I get it. It's not that. It's not, oh, well, that's quite a long time. But I think for instances of, farm growing things, farmlands and economic policies and just policies in the political sort of aspects of things, that's nothing. That's a really short time, a short amount of time to actually see results, to actually see, a change. So, it's just 5 years. You're thinking, whatever, it's 5 years. No, I mean, well, you have to start somewhere, right? And it is kind of a scary thing because I think a lot of people are not really paying that much attention to this. It's one of those things that I feel, I don't know why, it's just, I think as humans, and again, as we're human beings living on this planet, we have so many things because, again, we're surrounded constantly, we're being bombarded by news all the time. And you feel as everything's really bad all the time, and everything's bad, there's no hope for the human race. It can feel like that a little bit, and that's what I mean with the whole apocalyptic thing. Oh yeah, there's not gonna be any food and water is also because that also grows. I'm starting to think, right? Oh yeah, of course you need water to grow these, to grow food, of course, but also you need water, to live as human beings. But of course, as the more produce and the more sort of more farmlands you have, of course the amount of water that you're gonna need is going to be major. It's gonna be greater than the one that you're using now. So again, if water is all the resources are finite, not infinite. So again, it just begs the question of, oh my God, are we going to be fighting wars over food in the next 100 years? Hopefully not. I think we'll have to figure it out at some point. But again, because we're constantly being sort of surrounded by bad news all the time. It's just your perception because you're constantly everyone's online these days, and you just get informed. You're just better informed than people were 30 years ago. So it's a little bit, I don't know, I guess someone will figure it out. I know there's only so much that my mental capacity can take, and only so many things and steps that I feel you can take, because I think as a human being, it gets quite worrisome, right? But it's okay, but what can you do about it? Unless you own an actual farm, you're not going to, I don't know, what am I going to do? Well, of course, both where both for policies that actually are more inclusive, and I think both for better policies. I think that would be sort of get informed about this. And I know it's a really tough, it's work, it's a hard job to get informed about so many, again, because I just mentioned it, there's so many things and so many different topics that I feel you need to be well informed in order to make appropriate, or at least what you believe are good choices for for yourself and future generations and the planet and it just in general. But I know it feels a little overwhelming. It's, oh my God, there's so many things that I need to actually be learning about. I have to be really informed about, because this doesn't seem like a huge problem now. But it seems like one of those things that, well, yeah, it's not a big problem now, but what's going to happen in the next 20 years and 30 years is probably going to be a big problem, when the time comes. So it's best, I think, to catch it before it becomes a problem. You don't want this to snowball into something bigger. You just want to catch it, as usual, as much things and as such many things in life. You want to catch it when it's small and manageable and you can actually find solutions, right? But I guess, besides that, I really do believe, it's really good. And I know the whole process of, the whole communal farmlands and all that. They mentioned it can be replicated, sort of. I mean, the technology is there. Technology is the know-how. Probably the United States already has this. Or if they don't have it, I don't believe it takes that much of a leap to actually figure things out as, hey, we're going to do this greenhouse things. as they the Netherlands did it, Spain's doing it. I think there was another country they mentioned, I think Canada as well. So again, it's not about the know-how, it's not about the technology. I don't think it's even about the space. I think it's just about, again, she mentioned, it's labor, but again, I think those are fixable things, I believe. Because again, if you have better policies in place, maybe people, because again, the rate of unemployment is quite high. So I think people, bring people in, make them interested in this kind of work, which I think is falling a little bit out of fashion. Because again, sometimes, and maybe that's just, I think, recent generations, you feel as in, farmland and farm life is just, unless, and I know this is very specific, of course, if you live in one of those places in which farmland is the way of life, that's not going to be weird. But I think for the average person that doesn't really have any contact, didn't grow up on a farm, didn't come from a farming place, it's kind of not a mystery, but I think there's probably less of an interest in seeing and actually learning, where does food come from? Where is the strawberry that I'm eating comes from? Where is the food that I'm buying? All the vegetables that I'm getting, where are they being grown? Are they being imported? Do I grow these here? Do they grow locally? I think maybe in recent years, there's been a little bit more of an interest in that kind of side of things. But usually that's not really been the case. And of course, people do not want to grow up, and be farmers unless they're probably, again, my family already has a farm, or you're just used to this kind of lifestyle. And I think that's just same. It's just few people. I think probably I'm making a mistake here, but I think most of the population doesn't really live in places in which, I'm very familiar with farm life and how this works. And that's why people, they want to be other things. They want to study other things. They want to work in other fields. And this is just falling a little bit out of style because you're probably seeing it as, this is something so old-timey. And so, I don't know, my grandparents did this. It's not really, is that a way of life these days? Yes, it absolutely is. And I think maybe if people were a little bit more informed and probably they would probably get a little bit more interested in this, and then you would solve a little bit of the whole people don't want to work here. Maybe that would be a good solution. And of course, again, if people are interested in the whole what food they're eating and where does food come from, I think you're just a little bit more interested in general, and you're gonna make you're gonna learn about problems like this, and then you're probably gonna be, we have to fix this. So I think maybe that's just the case. And again, it's not without problems, like she mentioned. And even in Spain, things are not, there's constant, and again, with the EU and in this day and age, there's just so many things. A lot of the farmers are really struggling as well. It's a problem. Not everything is super perfect, and it's going to happen because what's perfect in this day and age? And yeah, the whole how it came about, sanitized version, a lot of in that particular time period during the Civil War, a lot of farmers also lost their farms. But whatever, that's a whole other story. But again, maybe we can sort of replicate a little bit of that in the United States. And again, it's not about, I think maybe the will is there, but like they mentioned, that's sadly the case, in which it's a system in which the lobbyists, which, they're the big companies, they have more money, and they're the ones that decide, how decisions are being taken, because there's a lot of lobbying, and that's how it goes, right? And I think maybe we should switch that, but I know it's really hard to sort of dismantle that system. I think it's really where it's really hard, because obviously the big companies are not interested in this, right? They're not interested in the normal average person, because why would they care, right? They're the big companies, they're billionaires, so they don't really care. But I didn't know. I think this was a very interesting video, also to learn how, because it's wild when you look at the numbers, all the corn that the United States is growing is not even for human consumption. That's insane to me. And the amount of corn that it's being grown, it's, oh my God, stop. And also I didn't know that it was depleting the soil as well. I thought maybe I've heard that a little bit, but I didn't know it was up to that point. And that's, I think, why they mentioned you have to rotate the crops, because, again, it's really bad, apparently. I kind of get it right there, because if you'll constantly grow one thing, the soil is going to be depleted of all the minerals, because probably tomatoes need other kind of minerals, and blueberries need other things. So of course, you have to switch it around, which is crazy. I think as humans we probably figure that out, but it's insane. And now I always saw I thought this big corn farmlands or these wheat farmlands, you know, those, oh, it's very pretty, all those wheat fields, and it's very, I think it's a very American thing. But now it's, oh my god, I think it's bad. So now I have to reframe this and be, oh my god, no, that's really bad. But yeah, I don't know, a lot of food for thought, and literally in this video. And that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.